Okay, since it looks like everybody's here, I'm going to start our meeting. I'd like to call to order regular scheduled West Hollywood Planning Commission meeting on this day, Thursday, September 19th, 6:30 in West Hollywood Council Chambers. Do we have a roll call, please? Oh, Pledge of Allegiance. Jake, will you do a Pledge of Allegiance for us?
Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. David, roll call, please.
Good evening. Tonight, Commissioner Jones is absent, so the voting record will reflect that. Commissioner Hoopengarner?
Present.
Commissioner Erickson?
Present.
Commissioner Buckner?
Here.
Commissioner Elchel?
Here.
Vice Chair Bass?
Here.
Chair Carvalero?
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Great, thank you, David. So now we have approval of the agenda, and I would like to suggest that due to the fact that some of the commissioners have to recuse themselves from one of our public hearing items, item 10A, I'd like to bring item 11A, new business, forward of public hearing so that the commissioners can go home when they recuse themselves. Any other changes to the?
Yes, I would like to pull the consent item for public comment.
Okay, call a vote.
Which consent item, both?
The preschool.
And we call a vote on that, right?
With the approval of the agenda, it'll be.
No, I'd like to, don't we call a vote on whether we want to pull?
To move the excluded consent calendar? Yes, you can.
Okay, so all in favor of pulling?
There's no second yet.
Okay, is there a second?
You said the San Vicente or the Santa Monica? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the answer to that.
972 North San Vicente.
I'll second it.
You second? Adam seconded. All in favor?
Commissioner Buckner? Thank you.
Thought I pressed it.
The motion fails.
So,
This remains on consent.
so we'll leave the agenda as is. Do I have a second?
The second with your item 11A being moved up. Yeah,
Correct.
I'll second that.
So I have a question for legal. If there are significant factual errors in the resolution that's in the consent item, how do we address those if we do not pull it?
Are they related to the direction that was provided
In the motion?
in the motion
Yes.
last time?
Mhm.
Then I think
It should be pulled.
if the commission will agree to it, then yes, it should be pulled.
So it's
So we
not
can
for
talk about
public
it.
comment. It's not for public comment that we're pulling it off consent. It's for commissioner comments. Correct?
There's two.
Yes,
there's-
because the only thing that's on the agenda tonight is whether or not that resolution reflects your direction from last.
And it was
2
my
meetings ago.
motion, and it does not reflect my motion.
So I think we have to have a conversation about the language in the resolution.
Okay, so then we move it to extended?
Yes, I would move it to excluded.
Okay, then
consent.
I'd like to make a proposal that we move the extended items forward of public hearing so that we can get that done before we go on to item 10A.
So move excluded consent items and your 11A new business before the public hearing of 10A.
Correct.
Okay, so that's a motion?
That's a motion.
Just
Do I have a second?
I will second it. May I ask, I have a question for legal, and that is not a public hearing for the item on San Vicente. It is, the public can speak on it if they choose to, but
Correct.
it is not a reissued public hearing for
Not
obvious
noticed
reasons.
as a public hearing, so the limitation of what we're talking about is just what your motion was last time and whether this reflects that motion.
And I am seconding the motion, I know I have to say it, but the first motion, Commissioner Hoopengarner wasn't as clear for what she just cleared up, and now I am seconding that motion because if
the motion maker had something factual that she doesn't feel was reflected, I would like to hear what my fellow commissioner would like to say.
Okay.
So we are clear that we're moving item 10, hold on.
9B has been moved to excluded consent, but
Right.
excluded consent will be moved before public hearings, and item 11A will be moved before public hearings.
Correct. Can we have a vote?
Okay, and that motion is approved.
Thank you. So approval of the minutes, I understand that we're going to be continuing the approval of the minutes to our October 3rd meeting?
Yes.
Great. So then we need to review, I guess we'll review new business first?
Let's do public comment first.
Public comment.
Oh, you want to do, okay. Do we have any public comments at this
We have two. Our
time?
first one would be Edward Levin.
Thank you, Ed.
Actually, the item I wanted to speak on is now on excluded consent calendar. Should I speak now or wait for that item? My
David?
comments had to do with the item that's now on excluded consent.
You have an opportunity to speak under the excluded consent calendar.
Then I prefer to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Same for you, right?
And our other public speaker?
Okay. Our last public speaker will be Stephanie Harker.
Good evening, Commissioners. Stephanie Harker, City of West Hollywood. I was trying to quickly find what I want. This is more a public service announcement than a comment. I wanted to make everybody aware, and I think it involves all of us. I know it's a little it's not about planning. It's about planning ahead. They're changing the voting system in LA County, which many of you have heard of. I wanted to remind people that there is a mock election happening, and that's what I was looking for. I believe it's the 28th and the 29th of September. Somebody's holding it right there. Is that the right date, Commissioner Buckner? Look at, they got them. To me, 2020 elections are going to be the most important probably in the history of our own voting. And I came to this chamber to hear the discussion about the changes. They're electronic, which is probably going to throw a lot of elderly people into a tizzy, and some of us who are not so elderly. But the mock election takes place over 2 days. There's 50 different locations in the county. I believe there's going to be 1,000 during the election, but there are 50. One of them is Plummer Park. I think that's the only one in this city where you can go and you can test out the new machine. And I don't think the county's done enough to get people out to the test run of these machines. I see a strange kind of voter suppression in this. It couldn't be the worst timing when the most important election of probably of the last 20 years is coming up next year, at least for those of us who lean to the left, as it were, but leaning towards decency as well. So anyway, I'm going to run around to commissions and remind people to please try and look that up, lavotes.net, or the county registrar's office. Find out the times and dates. I believe it's 10 to 4. You can vote any time of day on either day, and for us, it will be in Plummer Park. So please, 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 I keep saying it's important, but I get crazy and emotional about this. People should get out and vote anyway, but it's really going to be a big change in people showing up and doing this. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to remind people in the audience, if you'd like to speak, please fill out a speaker slip, which is at the back desk, and bring it to our secretary, and you'll have a chance to speak when your item comes up. So David, do we want to do new business now, or do we want to do the director's report? And
We can do the director's report.
Okay, John Kehoe?
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. John Kehoe, Director of Planning and Development Services. I'm just here to provide an update on Monday's City Council agenda. There are several items that would be of interest to the Planning Commission. One item that's on consent is a proposal that would update our regulations regarding billboards that are not on Sunset Boulevard. So billboards that are on Santa Monica Boulevard, La Cienega, La Brea, anywhere else in the city. The City Council asked us to bring a report of how many billboards there are in those streets and some possible scenarios of looking at changes to that. And of course, if they do direct us to make changes to billboards, that would be a zoning change, which then of course would have to come back through the Planning Commission. So that'll be interesting to see what they say about that. Then on the public hearing items, there are 3 public hearing items that came through the Planning Commission on zone text amendments. The first scheduled public hearing item is the item that the Commission talked about regarding the Sunset Specific Plan. There are some modifications to the language, kind of a technical changes to that. There's also the zone text amendment that has to do with providing flexibility for setback deviations as they relate to the fire department issues. And then that one also had possible changes to the review authority for development, for mixed-use development projects. So that one's going to council. And then the last one on the public hearing items from planning and development is the zone text amendments regarding projects that span commercial and residential zones. So all 3 of those items are on that agenda. So there'll be a lot of planning action at the City Council on Monday. And that's all I have for tonight.
For Mr. Cahill, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. On August 2nd of last year, one of my items from Commissioner was about a public handout at the planning desk related to affordable housing to make it easier for applicants to understand the affordable housing calculations, in particular as they relate to West Hollywood. I wanted to know if that has been prepared. Is that something that is available now to the public?
I know that the housing department was working on that, and I believe they completed it, so I'll have to check. I haven't gone to the front counter to check on that, but I can check on that and send you an email about that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great, thank you, Mr. Kehoe.
Then we can go on to items from the commissioners.
Okay, items from the commissioners. Do I have any planning commission-related items that we want to announce?
I just want to say I reviewed the city council agenda earlier this afternoon, and I really appreciate what staff did on presenting the council a resolution that reflects the will of this body when it differed from the recommendations of staff. So the council really has before them both options, and I think that that's really great for the public to kind of see those differences, as well as the council to have both of them right in front of them rather than just voting up or down on one or the other. So I just wanted to commend staff. I think that you heard some of the feedback we gave, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Erickson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to, first of all, say, because it involves planning, not really, it's a joke, but like, I want to welcome everyone to this weekend's Buy Pride right up the street, starting at 1:00 p.m. That's going to be going on here in West Hollywood. Specifically, I just want to, because I don't think people that plan these things get their shout out, and since you're all here for items and I'm recusing myself, so I'm getting an early night, I'm going to say something. I'm just going to read off their names because I believe it's really important that we thank the members of our community and public that plan really important events for us. So I do want to thank Alexis Sanchez, Jackie Steele, Robert Gamboa, Alana Roche, Brian Lawrence, Ian Lawrence Torino, Ashley Shine, Stephanie Suentes, Jason Fraser, Zakia Wright, David Titkin, and Nicole Crystal for, I think it was like 6 months worth of planning. And that's how LA Pride started, through people meeting at coffee shops and putting on something really spectacular. And it's the second one. It's actually the only one in the world that's sponsored. The city of West Hollywood has sponsored a Buy Pride, and it's the second year, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I've been proud to work with all of them. So I just wanted to give them their due real quick. And then also inform staff that on November 7th, I have to be on a plane by 11:30 that night, and I see we have about 13, that's not really true, but like 5 items that are public hearings on our agenda. So I will be excusing myself by 10 o'clock to make it to LAX, and that's even pushing it. So I will be excusing myself if we go past a certain allotment that we've discussed before. And I also will be recusing myself tonight on 8590 Sunset Boulevard.
Great, thank you. Any other recusals from the Sunset Boulevard project?
Yeah, I previously and publicly expressed some opinions that would call into question my fairness on this item, so I will be recusing myself from the Equinox item as well.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bass. Any other comments? Nope. Thank you. So, do we want?
Yeah, we can move into the regular consent calendar item for item 9A. And we can, if we can get a motion and a second. Motion by Vice Chair Bass, seconded by Commissioner Erickson. And the consent calendar is approved for item 9A.
So do we want to discuss item 9B at this time?
You may at this time.
So since we pulled item 9B, 927 North San Vicente Boulevard from the consent calendar, let's discuss that issue now.
This is and relates to item 6.20. Two components of this. One is that the motion was not to do this prior to the issuance of building permits, because that's physically impossible to do an air quality control on a garage that doesn't exist. So it would have to be prior to a certificate of occupancy. But more importantly, it has come to my attention that this is something that is subject to building and standards, building and safety, and is not in the purview of the Planning Commission. So I'm concerned that that item, in fact, is incorrect in two aspects. And I need legal to deal with the building and safety piece. The other piece is fixing when it happens.
Okay, there's two issues we're talking about. One is about the timing, if I'm hearing you correctly, and one is about whether or not you want to include that condition at all. Is that correct?
Well, if it's appropriate. I mean, is it in the purview of this body to include that item, given that it's a building and safety issue?
And just to piggyback on that, because we're reopening this, wouldn't you think now that we're getting into an issue that many members of the public talked about, so aren't we getting into an issue where we might have to reissue this for a public hearing? I'm just understanding that this issue was a result in a conversation that many of our commissioners here felt that after members of the public presented serious concerns regarding air quality, we had a conversation amongst ourselves and we conditioned it. And it is within the purview of the Planning Commission to condition buildings that come before us in the ways in which we see fit. So we did. But what I'm hearing my fellow commissioner now saying is that as the maker of the motion, that maybe that was not correct and maybe she was wrong and now we're seeing it.
And so the issue is whether or not you learned something after the close of the public hearing that caused you to change your mind, because we can't consider new information after the hearing.
My question was to legal as to whether or not we have done something correctly, given that information. And that was one of the reasons for this being on consent, to make sure this was done correctly.
Well, it's on consent to reflect the direction from the Planning Commission at the very last meeting. With respect to the ventilation study, it is something that the applicant has agreed to do. And so if an applicant is open to doing something, and it came after a long discussion and deliberation and conversation back and forth as to how to get the commission to a place of comfort with this project, some of the commissioners wanted assurances that there was adequate ventilation in that garage where children were going to be. That was something that the applicant agreed to do. So it's not a standard condition that we apply all the time, but it is something that the applicant agreed to do. So it was part of that discussion and negotiation with her that got it in the resolution. If you want to consider taking it out, I would recommend renoticing it for another hearing, because the public doesn't know that we're going to talk about what conditions should be in and what conditions shouldn't be.
Oh, on that, I'm definitely agreed. I just wanted to make sure that we were not overstepping our bounds in our purview, and that was my concern. The it's physically impossible to do this prior to permit. That's a separate issue.
It sounds like, and I would like to ask my fellow commissioner, did you find out information after the close of the public hearing that's causing you to change your mind?
Yes.
As the legal?
Yes.
So that brings up an issue, and I would love legal to
Well,
entertain that conversation.
the prior to permit was not my motion. My motion was C of O.
And that's what we're
Prior
here
to
to talk
C of O.
about, the
Okay.
correct language of your direction.
Certificate of occupancy. Okay.
But if you've learned information after the close of the public hearing that makes you reconsider including it, then we have to notice this for another public meeting and notice that.
It's a question for you as our legal counsel. Should we have been told that up front, that that is not within our purview, yes or no? And did that affect this decision? The prior to issuance, you physically cannot do an air quality test on an empty lot prior to permit.
It's not asking for an air quality test, it's a ventilation report.
Well, but you have no ventilation on an empty lot.
But you have a plan.
And the building department dictates how many air exchanges have to happen.
Exactly.
So they will provide a report saying that they will comply with the building department, saying that the air exchanges will be this number as required by the building department. So, and they can submit that before they're issued the building permit, because the building will comply in the end.
But it was my understanding that Commissioner Erickson's request was that the actual thing be tested after it was installed.
Well,
And in that respect, it has to happen prior to C of O. not prior to
Unfortunately,
permit.
we don't have the minutes to look at to see what he actually said. So at this point, because we continued it, so
That was my understanding, is that you wanted the air to be tested on the actual building once it was done, with cars in it.
Well, I think first, because now I'm concerned that we are getting into a public hearing debacle. We do have members of the public that have signed up for this item. And two, I'm hearing you feel now, because of one of our commissioners, that we might need to reissue a public hearing for this item. I mean, it can simply be voted on at this point, right, whether or not we choose to do that, correct?
If it reflects what you voted on last time and there's no change in the decision, you can vote on it tonight. If some commissioners have changed their mind as to what that approval looks like, then based on information you learned after the hearing, then yes, we need to have another meeting to discuss that.
Yeah, public comments?
We have three. Our first public speaker will be Edward Levin.
Thank you, Mr. Levin.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Commission. I was quite concerned about this item. I believe that requiring ventilation, that you're dealing with building standards, you're dealing with the mechanical code and the building code, not with the zoning ordinance. I don't believe that's proper for you to do. However, under the and I don't believe it's proper to invent requirements from the dais that the applicant then frankly is approving under duress. Having said that, I believe that staff has done the best job possible of neutering this item so that it basically means that the applicant will conform to the building code for ventilation prior to issuance of the building permit. I have no problem with that. It is something that you should stay away from. You should be very careful. You should stay within the limits of your authority. But right now, the best thing that you can do is to let this woman move ahead with her project. So I would encourage you, in fact, as it's written, as it currently stands, as staff has explained 6.20, to approve it on consent or excluded consent as is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Annette Kazmierska.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, and good evening, Commissioners.
Can you please state your name and city of residence, please?
Yes, my name is Annette Kazmierski. Its last digit is an I. I am Polish, but I don't conform to the feminization of my name, so. And I am a West Hollywood resident. I actually live adjacent to the proposed preschool. I actually in keeping with the members of the public that spoke last time, I also have nothing against children and believe that more families will revitalize West Hollywood, and I believe there is a need for additional preschools based on what I have heard although I do not have children myself. I do live right across the street from West Hollywood Elementary, so I've been living with noise for a while, so I am satisfied with the adjustments made in that capacity. However, since the previous meeting, and especially on looking over the adjusted plans, I do have serious concerns, and I will simply enumerate them here and give you a brief sketch, since it seems this is in flux, and I don't want to waste your time, but if it gets reset for hearing, perhaps I can speak on these further. My first concern relates to safety of the underground garage, not necessarily for air quality, which I didn't really understand all the jargon that just went ahead, but for the Americans with Disabilities Act and access. The parking space designated as ADA is in, I believe, from looking at the plans, in the front section of the underground garage, and it appears from the new parking and queue flow that it is separated off from the queue, so that basically you can only park in that space prior to or after the drop-off and pickup times. It's kind of sandwiched in the corner. I'm not sure that that is adequate. Also, the space for dropping off students and the queue seem to be so tight that I am not sure it complies with the requirements for dropping off a disabled student. I have not measured, I am not an architect, so again, I'm just sketching this. My second concern, it is one that came to my attention recently, and it seems to be of great importance specifically because it is so tight, but I'm not sure that the property has been surveyed, so that I'm not sure that the logistics underground will actually work, which is number 3, the parking logistics themselves, the shortening of required spaces for the tandem spots. All is so tight, I'm not sure that the project could even go forward. Finally, on September 9th, I returned to my home at 2:30 p.m. to find that there was no on-street parking within a 3-block radius of my home due to parents of West Hollywood Elementary students. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Harker?
Stephanie Harker, City West Hollywood. I would urge the commissioners to take the advice or a suggestion of council. Thank you, Ms. Langer. That this come back. I think that there is even more information that was not brought forward and not considered during the original public hearing on this. And perhaps if there was some more and things were changed around and the applicant or the developer was going to make the changes that are necessary, although I don't feel this is a good spot for this particular project, but I think that the rest of it needs to come forward because I'm almost certain that the people who were unaware of what was going on, the neighbors and interested parties, would be bringing forth an appeal. So maybe if it comes back for public discussion and the necessary changes are made to the satisfaction of the community and the commission and the project developer, that it could avoid a long and tedious appeal. As we all know, that takes time, energy, and money. So perhaps reopening the public hearing would be a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was our last public speaker. The applicant is here if you do have a specific question.
Okay, so given this unusual situation, yes, does the applicant have a rebuttal? Would the applicant like to make a rebuttal? You're not required to.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Everyone can speak on the item. It's an item on your agenda, but I just want to remind everyone that we're talking about the decision that happened last time and whether or not this resolution properly reflects that. That's the scope
Okay, so
of what
given
we're
this is
doing
such an
tonight.
unusual situation, what
Very
is
unusual.
what is the appropriate action here? We shouldn't be deliberating, but we do need to make a motion.
Whether or not you can, if this language does not reflect what you directed us to do last time, We can tinker with it a little bit to perfect it, but that's the scope of what was on your agenda tonight. If you're
But no,
taking new information and rethinking your decision, that needs to be another public hearing.
Okay, so this is not, it's not appropriate to have the applicant speak at this time.
She doesn't need to unless she wants to submit a comment card the way all the other members of the public did, because it's an agenda item.
Mr. Chair,
I think we're good.
I'm going to move the item. I am fine. And if there is a second, we can vote and we can go from there.
Great.
Moved by Commissioner Erickson, seconded by Chair Carvalero. And the excluded consent calendar is approved. 4 ayes, 1 no, 1 abstention. The resolution the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about waiver of fees.
Thank you, David. Okay, so now we'll take care of new business, which is the appointment of Planning Commission subcommittees, which I've been working on for the last week. We have 3 subcommittees to appoint at this time: Design Review, Long Range Planning, and 1343 Laurel Avenue. Green Building Working Group, Development of Incentives for Designated Multifamily Properties Task Force, and City Traffic and Mobility Study Working Group have been disbanded due to inactivity. So for Design Review, I would like to appoint Sue Buckner, who will act as chair, myself, Rogerio Carvalero, and Lynn Hoopengardner. For Long Range, I'd like to appoint Stacy Jones, who will act as chair, Adam Bass, and John Erickson. And for 1343 Laurel Avenue Vision Concepts, myself, Rogerio Carvalero, and John Erickson. And that takes care of new business.
And that is duly noted.
Pardon?
That's noted for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On to public hearings. Do the commissioners recuse themselves who need to leave at this point?
Yes, they need to recuse themselves, leave the...
Yep. So I'll just make note that 7965, item 10B, 7965 and 7985, Santa Monica Boulevard, French Market, has been continued to a date uncertain. So we only have one item, 10A, 8950 Sunset Boulevard, to review as a public hearing.
And just for clarification for the public, I know I said it in my commissioner comments, I am recusing myself, but during the conversation with Robertson Lane, I did make remarks regarding Mr. Ross, who owns 40% of a stake within the Equinox brand, and it was not in the positive light. And although I do believe I can make an accurate and unbiased decision, I am recusing myself just for the overall sake of it.
Thank you, Commissioner Erickson.
Pass what motion?
David, Commissioner Altschul just had a really great question. Since there's only 4 of us, how many votes do we need for this motion to pass?
You will need 3 votes for it to pass.
Okay. So now we'll discuss item 10A, 8590 Sunset Boulevard, Equinox Fitness. It's basically to amend a conditional use permit for the expansion of the existing Equinox gym in WeHo. Derek, do you have a staff report?
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. Item 10A, it's an amendment to conditional use permit 2006-016, which is expansion of Equinox Fitness Club. I'll be going through a brief description of the project, and afterwards the applicant will be going through some details of the actual project itself. The proposed project, as I mentioned, is to amend the CUP, which originally approved Equinox Fitness Club. On the first floor, they will be occupying a vacant tenant space, which is next door. It's an existing salon, which will be vacant by the time they're ready. The second floor will have a reconfiguration, but no expansion. And on the roof, there will be a new outdoor rooftop restaurant, which includes an addition for back-of-house operations, as well as sales, service, and consumption of alcohol as an accessory use to the restaurant. Equinox was originally approved back in 2002 by the Planning Commission. Since then, there have been 3 expansions. One of them in 2007 was reviewed by the Planning Commission. The other 2 were reviewed at staff level, one in 2011 as well as 2013 because they were determined to be minor amendments. Equinox is located within the Sunset Strip, which is known for entertainment, restaurant, shopping, and hospitality uses. It is also located in the SSP zone, which is a Sunset-specific plan. Equinox is located in the west building of the parcel, which includes 3 separate buildings. One of them is a vacant space, which was occupied by H&M. The other building on the east side has restaurant, retail, as well as offices. Other neighboring uses include multifamily residential to the south, other retail, personal services, and offices within the surrounding area. The first floor includes an expansion of the retail and reception area into the existing salon vacant space in the purple that you can see, as well as the existing bay windows that you can see right here along the facade that will get straightened out. So straightening out those bay windows will have a reduction in floor area. The second floor, there's just more of a reconfiguration, so there's remodeling that's being done on the second floor, but there won't be any expansion of the uses. On the rooftop, currently right now, it's not being used. It's just occupied by an on-site sign as well as mechanical equipment. But the new proposed use will have a rooftop restaurant, which includes cabana pods, back-of-house services, a service bar, landscaping, as well as a water feature. And the proposed project will increase in height. There will be a 10-foot, 6-inch overall increase. So overall, it'll be 43 feet, 6 inches within the allowed 60 feet in height. The FAR will increase by 0.02, so a total of 1.99 FAR, which is within the allowed 2.75. In regards to parking, currently right now the space requires 401 on-site parking spaces. This is being provided through the subterranean parking garage. Now, with the proposed amendment, it would allow the reduction in parking using today's or the current parking requirements. The gym would now require 148 parking spaces. This would create a surplus in parking with this reduction. As far as the proposed restaurant, it includes a full menu, soups, salads, sandwiches, coffee, tea, as well as an accessory use of alcohol. This would be type 47, which essentially is full alcohol. As far as the hours of operation, it would be consistent with the gym hours, and the sales and service of alcohol would end 30 minutes prior to closing. So in summary, the rooftop use requires an administrative permit. The addition requires a development permit. Both of those applications typically are reviewed at staff level, and the sales, service, and consumption of alcohol as an accessory use to a restaurant requires a minor conditional use permit, which is normally reviewed at a director's hearing. However, the Director of Planning and Development Services has determined that these changes collectively are a major change to the CUP, therefore it requires the Planning Commission's approval. So in conclusion, the proposed project provides updated and improved amenities for Equinox as well as its members. The rooftop restaurant with the accessory use of alcohol will complement similar uses along the Sunset Strip and along the SSP. As conditioned, the proposed changes won't have a negative impact on adjacent residents or businesses. Therefore, all conditions can be made for the project, and staff recommends approval of Resolution PC 19-1339 as conditioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Hoopengarner?
Hi. Excuse me. Thank you. What is the allowable occupancy of that outdoor dining 4,285 square feet?
Occupancy is typically calculated through the building code, so that's something that would be determined later on during the plan check process.
But what is, in a normal restaurant, outdoor, restaurant space, what is the normal occupancy calculation?
I'm not too sure. Perhaps the architect can maybe speak on that when they present.
Okay. Now, you stated that the building is going to be 10 feet 2 inches taller.
10 feet 6 inches taller.
6 inches.
Correct.
Okay. And that's due to the elevator?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
The elevator shaft is going to be the tallest.
And do we have a new mechanical system available to us that's going to allow that much clearance for all the mechanicals in addition to the actual cab?
The mechanical equipment would be reviewed during plan check, but I think that's
I'm
something.
talking about the mechanicals for the elevator, above the elevator, not the HVAC.
Are you asking, do they need more than what's currently there? Yes, because the elevator currently right now is going to the rooftop. So I don't know if there will be additional equipment, but.
No, my question is, once you have a cab, and then you have all of the gears and the things that need to lift the cab, the cab is already.
Oh, are you asking
yeah.
if the mechanical equipment goes above that?
Above that?
No, it does not.
It does not go above that?
It does not, no.
So you don't need any additional clearance at the top of the cabin, so it can all be contained within the 10 feet 6 inches?
That's correct.
Okay. And I'll wait till I hear from the applicant on this. It'll inform my other questions. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Buckner?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's appropriate at this time or not, but the Equinox Gym occasionally has special events. Is there going to be a special event issue with regard to the rooftop? Something we need to condition or include in the...
Special events are for any type of event, special events, you'd have to obtain a special event permit through our event services division, separately from what they're being approved for.
So you don't know whether there's any plan to have any special events up there? My understanding from reading the report is that the purpose of the restaurant upstairs is to provide food and beverages for the membership only.
I think the applicant could probably speak on that if they plan on having any special events in
Okay,
future.
thank you.
Commissioner Elchel? No? Great. So I'd like to have the applicant make their presentation. You have 10 minutes. Please state your name and city of residence when you come to the podium.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Luba Senatorova, and I'm Vice President of Entitlements for Equinox. City of residence is New York. I'm very pleased to be here and present our project, or actually improvement to the existing Equinox facility. I'd like to start with thanking the planning staff for working with us. on this project and directing us and giving us good advices and ideas. So thank you very much. It was very helpful. I'd like to say that over 15 years, Equinox has been serving residents of West Hollywood and neighboring cities and communities with first-class services, health and fitness, and ancillary services included. And we've been grateful to the residents of the city for supporting our business and allowing us to stay despite of the fact that many businesses have closed throughout this period. And that's allowed us coincidentally take over their spaces and give back and reinvest into our member experience. Pretty much every 3 to 5 years of our operation, as you could see from the history, we've had a renovation or expansion or some sort of capital improvement to the facility, and all that drove us to do this was our commitment to the members and serving them the best we can with high quality materials, design, and operational characteristics. So there's another 3 to 5 cycle nowadays where we have an opportunity to take some additional space on the ground floor and provide more space for our entryway, which is now very congested with a narrow entry and a service desk. So that creates a little bit uncomfortable situation when people come in with multiple questions and they don't have enough room to communicate, sometimes in private. So majority of the ground floor expansion would allow to create a larger area for reception and lobby, as well as reconfiguring our retail shop. As Derek mentioned, the renovation on the second floor is mainly reconfiguration of the yoga studio, reduction of the spa overall, and removal of the unutilized programs such as hammam and extra treatment rooms, and rebuilding the yoga studio into more branded shape. We also propose to replace the, and I can try to go to the second floor. This is the proposed, the windows facing south along the south elevation on the second floor. We propose to replace them, as well as the skylights with similar type, but obviously better quality because those were put in about 5 or 6 years ago. Non-operable windows, there will be no noise or light or anything like that emanating from the second floor. And adjacent to the windows will be our yoga studio, which is a very quiet operation. The rooftop is, a fairly new concept, and we're very in love with this proposal. This is something that's a little bit unique. We don't have this kind of program in all of our clubs, but because of the location and the spirit and the environment where we are in, and the businesses that surround us, we felt compelled to provide something similar, or maybe with a little new creativity in mind. So most of the spaces will be open, except for some enclosures to provide back of the house, food prep area, some storage equipment, restrooms, and stairwell and elevator. There'll be a 3-inch deep water pond feature, and floating on that will be a deck with cabanas and some furniture in the middle of the space here, where people can sit down, have their meals, relax after a workout or before a workout. To the south here, this will be a service counter, a bar. Obviously, it will be blocked from this side, but there'll be an open counter on this side. It will close when the establishment closed to prevent any contamination, and reopen again when the establishment reopens. In addition to food service on the rooftop, we will continue to maintain our cafe and juice bar on the ground floor as well. The operation is intended to be for quiet, relaxed environment. There'll be a very low background music emanating from the speakers. They'll be hidden in the planters and in landscaped area and within the cabanas. The lighting will be very soft, turned away from the exterior and pointing down, basically like illuminating the floor, the deck, and the landscape surrounding this rectangular rooftop. So this is, in general, what the proposal looked like. I'll turn over the stage to Jerome Tobias from Flux Studios, our architectural consultant, and he can provide a little bit more flavor and detail on our proposal, and then we're happy to answer all our questions. Our operations team is also here in case there are any questions regarding the operations. If there are any questions regarding my statement, I'm happy to answer them now or later.
Let you finish the presentation and last question.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jerome Tobias, and I think Derek and Luba gave a pretty good presentation already of the first and second floor. So I was going to probably continue on some of the details of the roof. So some of the concerns that were about light, we have this image where we're showing where the areas of light are. They're going to be, for the majority, shining down on the deck and not away outside of the building to control the light leaks. It's also, it's going to be a white light, even though these are colored. This is mainly to use as a key for this, to show that this is the type of light that'll be around the water feature. It'll be just shining to illuminate the water at night. These are kind of recessed inside of the wooden trellis, shining down, again trying to create more of this like sparkly, starry night feel on the roof at night. Just typical wall sconces where we have the elevator and the restrooms. Inside of the cabanas, we have a large shade, but it's not like a very bright light source. Around the restaurant bar, we have linear LED lighting, again shining down. We have these recessed in the planters shining down just so that people can see the walkways. These are kind of like a twinkly light effect that are dispersed throughout the planters, similar to in this picture. And then some bollards on the main deck, just to provide general lighting in the main space. An example of the plants that we'd like to use to one to help shield the view would be, we have a 42-inch planter, and they'll just be like smaller vegetation planted inside of here, similar to shown in these pictures. For a better idea of what these cabanas look like, they're fairly open. Again, on the roof deck, we're trying to create like a lot of different variations of seating. Some are a little bit more open seating that are in the middle, and these create a little bit more of an intimate space, but not like a closed off area, just to give people different areas to sit. I'm going to really briefly just go through the changes from the elevations. I don't think that was discussed as much. This is currently what is there, and what we are proposing to do once we change. What's dashed here is the storefront. Right here is the current store or entry. We want to make it more of a grand entrance And that is it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Uchel.
Did you state or not whether or not the restaurant and alcohol facilities are for the use of the members only?
Yes, primarily for the, it's amenity to our members.
Question is for the members only. How do you qualify it by saying primarily?
Well, we have different type of memberships. We have like an annual members, and then we have like guest passes. So there may be a person who's not like a full member.
Can a person who's just passing by on the street go upstairs and order a martini?
Well, we don't see any reason why we wouldn't allow it to do that.
So
It's
in
just
other
from
words, you're not
practical
restricting-
standpoint, we don't think it would be.
You're not restricting it at all to
Will not
just
deny
members?
people if they want to, get a martini on.
You're not restricting it at all to members only, is that correct?
We will not. Unless you want a condition, then we will. But so far, we don't have any plan to deny access.
But just to clarify, they would need to buy a guest pass to access the roof deck. Someone couldn't just walk in and say, hey, I want to go get a martini and go upstairs.
Well, again, we have not finalized our program, but we believe that there won't be anybody who's not a member wanting to go up on the roof and just get
But
a
you'll
martini.
welcome anybody who wants to buy a drink.
We're not going to welcome, but we probably
You'll
not gonna be-
serve.
Well, we will serve if there is a
But you won't
person,
you won't
once a
welcome.
year, someone decides to walk in.
You'll
And
serve them, but you won't welcome them.
we'll serve food too. We'll try to sell memberships as well.
You'll sell them anything they want to buy.
Well, that's our business, we're trying.
Well, what baffles me a little bit is your business, which is quite successful, is fitness. And I don't understand how you encourage somebody to work out for an hour or two and then go have a couple of martinis.
We wouldn't encourage that, but apparently it's international trend right now that, in health organization, some reports say that, a glass of wine is not necessarily bad for your health.
I think it's antithetical. Don't you think it's antithetical
I mean,
to your
we're a
purpose?
little off topic from where we need to focus right now. So do we have any other questions for the applicant?
I would like to stay on that topic for a minute, because in our report, in our staff report, it says, "The proposed restaurant will include the sales, service, and consumption of alcohol as an ancillary use to food service as an amenity accessible only to Equinox members." So I'm hearing something contradictory from you now, and
The plan is that it's going to be for members, but you ask me a question as someone walks by and wants to buy a martini, which is not a very typical situation, and I don't think we would deny that person. But, the plan is, it's just like from the practical standpoint, there won't be anybody wanted to get a martini who's not a member.
So you're
But, yeah,
saying
we
one
would
thing.
li- we-
well, the question is it open to the public, or is it for members only?
The original intent to provide this kind of amenity was to serve our members. But if there is demand, it's not a standalone business. It's not going to generate a lot of income.
So it's open to the public? It's open to the public?
We don't have a plan to have it open to the public and operate as a standalone restaurant business. Our idea is to provide it as an amenity
Aren't you
to our
being rather
members.
evasive? Aren't you being rather evasive?
Well, let's put it this way then. For now, we would like it to be for members only, or those members that have member pass, or some sort of access to the club.
Okay, let's stick with that, just so we can move on. We can circle back during deliberation. Commissioner Hoopengartner?
Apropos of that, back to my original question of staff in terms of occupancy of that space.
So for building code, for the building code calculations for square footage for that space, there'd be 291 occupants allowable on that roof.
Understood, thank you.
Excuse me, sir. Could you state your association with the applicant? What is your capacity?
I'm the architect working on the project.
Thank you.
And we received a new set of plans up here when we arrived. Their color compared to the original ones, just to be clear, there's nothing changed on these plans? This is just a color version, or has something changed on these plans?
Nothing has changed. What we did was make it a little bit more graphic in order to present it.
Okay.
And we did add the furniture shown on the roof deck because that was previously missing, just for clarification of what that space is going to be used for.
I'd asked for more design information because the drawings were so schematic.
No, I appreciate them, and this is great. I didn't have time to review them, so I wanted to make sure if there was anything
Yep.
has changed, that we are made aware of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Nope, sorry.
Go ahead. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
David, do we have any public speakers? Yep. So will Annette Kazmersky please come to the podium, state your name and city of residence? And you have 3 minutes.
Annette Kazmersky, resident of the city of West Hollywood. I just wanted to second a comments made in an email actually by Karen Weston, who speaks on sound concerns. I live next to or adjacent to the London, and regardless, they take care to be responsive to neighbors' requests. However, I can hear normal conversation, non-passionate conversations, whether on a cell phone or in person, even if the people speaking are not drunk or excited, from my windows, whether they are open or closed. And it's an interesting dynamic because I also live across the street from the West Hollywood Elementary School. The balcony noise I can hear crystal clear no matter how high they are or how low they are, which windows they are, it bounces around. So there seems to be something, and I speak anecdotally, something about an elevated rooftop environment open to the air next to a hill. But I share the concerns of the community. West Hollywood, a lot of the enclaves are not typical 9-to-5 communities. So it doesn't matter if these noise concerns are mitigated outside of the typical 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Guidelines. If the noise is in the middle of the day, it may not be annoying to somebody who has to sleep at night to go to work in the morning. However, if somebody has an alternative schedule, it can be or who works from home, it can be very disruptive. So I speak to that, and I would second the concerns of the immediate public to any sort of rooftop use. And I believe that's my main concern, so I will stop there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert Country, we have a question mark. I'm sorry, we couldn't read your last name. Thanks. Followed by Jean Allen.
Hello, it's Robert Countryman, and I'm with the City of West Hollywood, or live in the City of West Hollywood. I am the president of the HOA at the Park Wellington, which butts right up next to Equinox. And I'm here because I've had a lot of homeowners express concern. The rooftop, the noise level, our buildings do butt right up next to each other, and there's a lot of homeowners that literally you can see right into the Equinox workout floor. That's how close we are. So the concern that they've expressed to me is the noise level, first of all. This is their home. You know, this is 163 units. You know, this could open up a Pandora's box with us. I mean, it would be noise, it would be constant complaints, it would just be a nightmare. So what we would like, and what we did, is we took a poll on our building link system, and 85% of the homeowners at the Park Wellington have said that they would not approve a rooftop. So I would just like you to take that into account. Like you guys had just made the comment about the alcohol and then not really knowing if it's open to the public, that just raises a bunch of concerns for me as well. I mean, it's basically a restaurant at that point, an open restaurant. It's like the Pally House. It's, you know, any open restaurant where there's, you know, can be noise, and we just don't want it. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jean Allen, followed by Stephanie Harker.
Good evening. My name's Jean Allen. I am the Secretary of the Board of Directors at the Park Wellington, and I share Sue Buckner's concern over special events.
City of Residence?
West Hollywood.
Thank you.
And when there are special events or they come up with some conditional use permit to have an opening, a membership drive, a holiday party, we're going to be the ones receiving all of that noise. I also have a degree in classical music. What's with this water feature? Water is a sound amplifier. Sound comes down hills. It's going to come cascading right down onto us. 50 of our units are on that side of the building and facing west. So once they have the permits, once they are in there, what's going to stop them from changing, oh, we're going to do it this way now. We already have the permit. And so then we're like stuck. If they have ambient noise, amplified music all day long, how do we know that it's not going to impact the quality of our lives, which is currently pretty peaceful and blissful? So our concern is noise. They can do anything they want inside the building, but we're very much concerned about the rooftop parking. And why in the world does a healthy workout place need alcohol? Because it's just going to cause more noise. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Stephanie Harker?
Stephanie Harker, City of West Hollywood. Yes, I too would question the amount of noise that would be emitted by illegally permitted 290 people. And I can't quite figure out why you would want to go to the expense of building this, designing this, and so on, if you were not going to have it available for gatherings of more than the membership. It just doesn't seem to make sense, and I would be opposed to it, and I think that the city has had a precedent that things were permitted and it went forward, and then it wasn't quite what people expected, but now it's a done deal. There's several rooftop issues that have gone on, so I hope this one would be sensibly denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, the applicant has 5 minutes to rebuttal. Would you like to speak to any of the comments that were made?
Yes, regarding the noise, obviously.
State your name and city residence.
Luba Senatorova, representing Equinox. Regarding the noise, this was our first thing in mind when we only started thinking about the rooftop. And we believe our design has accommodated any possible measures to actually make sure that any music or any noise from the operation will be contained. So the planters, the cabanas, all of those features are created to absorb any noise emanating from that. Also, due to topography, the rooftop, I don't know if I can go back, but the rooftop of our building is about 20 feet higher than the roof of the Wellington apartment building. Plus, there's a parapet wall. So, and the distance itself is very large. We also submitted for the record to the staff our acoustical memo. We unfortunately forgot to mention it, but we took measurements of the existing ambient noise in 3 spaces along the south side of the building on a typical weekday and typical weekend, on Monday and on Saturday in the morning and in the evening. And generally the ambient noise around those times was like 50-55 decibel. We then estimated what would be the noise level just from the operation of the rooftop. And we took in the account background music. There won't be any amplified music. It will be recorded music. The sound system will be on a sound limiter. So there'll be a limit up to which, the level of volume that the speakers will emanate. Also, there'll be many speakers located close to each other in so way that music or sound coming from each speaker is very low, but it covers like the whole territory. And the speakers will be located very low, so that they will not be like at the rooftop. So we took that into the account, and also we took into the account an operation of like a restaurant, a bar type, with 100+ visitors. And the acoustical engineer's calculations provided that at the Wellington apartment, the noise from the rooftop operation will be at like 42, 43 decibel, which is below the noise code requirement of the county of Los Angeles, and even below the existing ambient noise level. So that gave us confidence that there shouldn't be any impact. But again, we're willing to, once it's open, we're willing to conduct subsequent study just to determine whether or not the design that we had in mind and all the precautions that we had in place, in fact, result in the design performance. Regarding the occupancy, 290 some persons, again, this is a building code, and the building code, we actually took the most conservative, and this is just to calculate sufficient egress from the roof to make sure that in the event of fire or some other emergency, the egress facility are adequate to accommodate the maximum code allowed occupancy. And it's based on, I think, one person per 15 square feet. So it's like for people just standing next to each other. As you could see, there is a furniture, there's a water feature that is not occupiable. So from operational standpoint and based on the furniture layout, there'll be a fraction of that number ever at any given time up on the roof. So I don't think that would be a concern, and we're happy to take a lower number if the building department or the fire department decides to, reduce the allowed occupancy on the roof. We're willing to consider that. But we don't plan to have 290 people on that. It's not the program that we have.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, I'd like to close the public comment, but keep the public hearing open in case there's any questions. Do we have any disclosures that we need to? Yep. No?
Yes, thank you. I did get a telephone call from an owner from Park Wellington discussing mainly the noise issue, which was directly related to what was in the staff report. And I suppose I should disclose that I'm a member there. However, I don't believe that my membership is going to affect my decision-making or participation in this hearing at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Hoopengarner?
No disclosures other than a site visit.
Okay. I am a member also, but I can remain neutral about this decision. Commissioner Altschul?
No disclosures, I'm not a member.
Thank you. So then I'd like to talk or start commissioner deliberation. And who would like to go first? Commissioner Hoopengarner?
It is the Sunset Strip, and, restaurants, yay. Bars, yay, that's what the Sunset Strip is about. But I have some grave concerns about this. That occupancy is allowed by code, and there's nothing to prevent the furniture from being removed, from special events from being held, from operating hours to be abused. I think this commission has been on the receiving end of more than one instance of this, with Catch and its situation. I do see that staff has put in a provisional condition about a sound wall, a glass sound barrier, which is great, but it's optional, and it's not until in such time as it's required. And just as a point of fact, and I think Commissioner Caviero can probably agree that putting that in after the fact is going to be twice as expensive as doing it on the upfront correctly. So should we choose to move forward, I would say that would be a requirement on the upfront rather than, after the fact. I think it's just in everyone's best interest. that the potential occupancy bothers me a great deal. This could be completely repurposed and turned into a nightclub, turned into a bar. And I appreciate the applicant's intent and what they say, but that isn't necessarily how it will be operated. And I feel uncomfortable about setting up a situation where we leave this all on code enforcement to go in and try and enforce this on a nightly basis. I used to live up on DeLongpre, right next to what was the House of Blues, and behind which hotel I always forget the name of. It's now, was the Argyle. Before that, it was the St. James. It's the what? The Tower, Sunset Tower. Okay, and I have personal experience with events being held on the lower patio roof there, and the sound cascading down onto the neighbors. I appreciate the fact that there's been sound studies done, but white noise level sound studies to me are not the same as the impact of someone singing a loud crowd of happy birthdays out over the roof. And I think that potential for disturbing the neighborhood is significant. I do have questions about the ingress and egress on those stairwells and whether or not that in fact meets safety. And then finally, does this plan meet, back to building and safety? They've got 2 bathrooms with a potential occupancy of 291 people. I mean, how is that even possible? So as of right now, I have a lot of grave concerns, and most, like the citizens spoke to, are about the noise. And when you start doing the math, the amount of money it's going to cost to punch a hole in the roof, add a new, stack on the elevator, add all of this expense, to me, the fact that you're going to sell a couple sandwiches and a couple of beverages to just your members only doesn't pencil out. So I'm wondering what the real story is here.
Thank you. I'd like to remind us just to stay focused on what we have to review, which is the appropriateness of the project. Because the building code issues, I completely appreciate that, and I saw the same things, but they will be ferreted out in the building development process. So, Commissioner Buckner.
Well, I have a couple questions. One, Derek, I see that you gave us a memorandum and where you increased the parking requirements. And although I see that there's now 148 required, and I know the City Council has changed the parking requirements, only 4 spaces for the restaurant. I mean, that doesn't seem to make much sense for me. If there's 291 people that could be up there on that deck. That's one issue that I'd like you to address. The other thing is the rooftop is now going to be a 3rd floor. And I know that this isn't necessarily what we need to be paying attention to now, but I don't know whether the roof was designed to hold that kind of an activity and all that weight up there in terms of the engineering. I imagine that the department's going to require an engineering plan, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Because it seems like now there's all this up on a roof, a lot more activity and weight and so forth. So they might not even be able to do what they think they're going to be able to do up there. I also agree with Commissioner Hoppendinger. We never can get your last name straight, so I'm going to call you Lynn. And that I think that the sound wall on the south side should be a required condition. I don't think it's something we should leave as an afterthought, because that might help, since most of the people that are speaking from the residents to the south, actually to the south of them, the south wall, if there was some kind of sound wall already part of the construction, I think it might help that. And I see also that you conditioned that there's not to be any cell phone talking along the walkway. I notice members go out there to talk on their cell phones. Apparently, it disturbs the neighbors quite a bit, so I'm glad that you put that condition in.
If I may clarify the parking question that you had. The 4 parking spaces that it says required for a restaurant, that's really speaking to the addition that's being done for the back of house operations. But the actual use for the rooftop is actually an additional 119, or I'm sorry, not additional, but 119 spaces, what's being required. And as far as the correction, what's being striked out, to clarify, originally the use was being calculated as a personal training for a health and fitness facility, but it should be for a health and fitness gym, like as a full gym. So that's where that correction is, from the 2 to 3.
The full gym requires additional parking versus a personal fitness.
It would require a ratio of 3 per 1,000 rather than the 2 per 1,000.
And is that county code or is that city?
That's city code. Today's code, the current code that was recently revised by city council.
And Derek, in regards to the south patio and cell phone usage, there's a provision in here to ban cell phone usage on that south patio, correct?
That's correct. That was actually a concern during the neighborhood meeting that a few residents had over at Park Wellington. And I don't remember his name, but one of the representatives from Equinox, I think he might have been operations manager, he said he was okay with restricting cell phone use on the south side.
Great. Commissioner Ulchel.
I think it's perfectly all right for them to annex the interior space that is next to them, that they wish to annex for whatever purposes. But I don't think it's all right for them to put a restaurant and a bar on the roof because of all the objections previously herein stated by members of the commission and by members of the community. I think it's a little bit inconsistent and insincere of the applicant to, in their written application, say that it's for members only, and in their oral presentation say, well, we'll take whatever we can get. So I think I would be in favor of the interior expansion on the what is now the enclosed top level, and not in favor of putting something on the roof at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Ulchel. So yes, we actually are looking at 3 different permits: a development permit, administrative permit, and a minor conditional use permit. The administrative permit and the minor conditional use permit have to do with the restaurant, so we could break it down if we needed to. I have the same concerns my commissioners share, given our history in the city and what works and what doesn't work. In the provision, or in the staff report, there are a couple of things that kind of jumped out to me. And being a member, I know that they have 2 very large parties every year, the Equinox membership party. I would hate to see that happening on the roof deck, because it would just, there you would see potentially 100 people on the roof. There's also a provision to ban live music. Does that include DJs? Because they often have DJs as part of the Equinox parties. If it doesn't, I would like to make a provision to include DJs as part of that no live music or no live events or no live entertainment, on the roof deck. I was shocked a little bit by the idea of having a water element on the roof, just because, and I think I understand, maybe being from out of town, the designer might not understand the environmental issues that we're dealing with now here in Los Angeles. We're in drought, and the city for years has been trying to move away from water features more and more, and given that that water does amplify sound, it amplifies my concern, sort of the appropriateness of having a water element up there, and sort of the disconnect in terms of this feature, our environment, and what it really brings to this facility. I agree that if we were to let this go forward, we should make the glass sound barrier mandatory for the instigation or the implementation of this project. And I would like to see alcohol stop being served 1 hour before closing instead of just the half hour. But again, these are my thoughts, and kind of curious to see how other commissioners feel about this. We can break it down. We could just look at the development permit and allow everything to happen from the rooftop down. Or we could look at the whole project, because they are allowed to do that.
It would be my inclination to look at the rooftop down. I think there's a tremendous number of issues around the rooftop: occupancy, use, hours of operation, and to one of our citizens' comments that I've made myself at other discussions. Are these kinds of hours imply that everyone works a regular 9-to-5 job downtown somewhere or at Santa Monica somewhere? And that's not who we are as a community. We have actors who are filming late at night who need to sleep during the day, and set designers who have the same schedule, and people who work from home. And speaking as someone who works from home, gotta love the neighbor's dog, and the noises that happen, and you're trying to have a serious phone conversation. And if that becomes a chronic event, then you're seriously limiting the rest of the community's ability to function. And that, to me, is a very real consideration, and too often, I think we perhaps focus more on the building itself and not really on the community. And so, to my mind, I don't believe that we should be pursuing this rooftop. I will just throw in anecdotally, I was there when this building was permitted originally, okay? This was Sunset Millennium Phase 1. This building, and I still have the IR, was designed originally and approved by this community to be an extension, aesthetically, of the Sunset Plaza. This was supposed to have mansard roofs. This was supposed to aesthetically look exactly like an extension of the Sunset Plaza, and then it changed. No, this was Sunset Millennium Phase 1. And then through the staff process, it changed. There wouldn't have even really been a roof had this been built as it was originally approved. So that's another whole conversation, but that's just some background on this actual facility. It was never designed to even have that capability. So notwithstanding, I would be fine with moving forward with the interior. I don't see any problem with that, but I would not be fine with moving forward with any rooftop expansion at this time and under these guidelines and with these plans.
Lauren, can I ask, the applicant by right has the ability to propose this and has the right to build this out, correct?
Which part?
The rooftop, the restaurant.
Well, part of the use is a conditionally permitted use for alcohol, and so that requires permission of this body.
We have a by right ability to increase the height without planning commission.
Do you have to answer that?
Increasing the height limit.
For the,
I believe it would need an administrative permit. I'm not sure if it would need a director's hearing or not for the rooftop, but it would need a discretionary entitlement.
Does somebody want to propose a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Alcho?
I would move that the staff bring back a resolution allowing whatever has been requested in the staff report on the existing top enclosed floor and denying without prejudice anything on the rooftop at this time.
We have a second? Okay, let's vote.
To be clear, Commissioner Altschuld, it was, you said the top enclosed floor, but it's, they propose ground floor changes as well.
Yes.
So to be clear, that it would approve both the ground floor and any interior
The
improvements,
present interior space.
not the rooftop. Just wanted to be clear on that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the motion did pass, noting the 2 recusals and Chair Carvalho voting no.
Thank you.
David, the appeal. Appeal language.
So David, do we have any unfinished business?
Let me do the appeal first for this, please.
Oh,
The decision's not final till we come back next meeting.
No unfinished business.
Okay. We've already done excluded consent calendar. Items from staff?
On our upcoming agenda at the regular meeting on October 3rd, we've got a comment hearing for a draft environmental impact for a project at Orange Grove in Santa Monica at 7811 Santa Monica Boulevard. And we've got a staff update on the citywide traffic mobility study.
Great, thank you. David, do we have any public comments at this time?
We have no public comment.
No? Great. And then items from the commissioners. Do we have any commissioner comments at this time? No? I want to let people know that I will not be here on October 3rd, and Vice Chair Adam Bass will be taking on for me. And then subcommittee management. Do we have any absentees to report?
Only that which was reported at the last design review that we're going to, I think,
October 10th.
October 10th.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I won't be at that design review either.
To be clear, I'm not sure what's on the agenda for design review at the next meeting, so I don't know if there's any recusals.
I have your packet. I
I
don't
know
recall
that there
the
was-
address.
October 10 was 855 Santa Monica Boulevard.
No, this will be for next week's.
For next week's meeting, I don't know what the agenda is, so I don't know if I would have to recuse myself.
Oh.
That's my question. And so I do know that there was a Chevron station on La Cienega that was coming before you, because I would, that's already gone through, okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, David.
Do you have our packets for design review?
Yes.
Okay.
8970 Cynthia Street.
Okay. So I'd like to adjourn this regularly scheduled meeting to our next meeting, which is scheduled for October 3rd, 2019 at 6:30 here in Council Chambers. Thank you.